Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures, and today we're doing another episode of our Planet Zoo mod spotlights, where we take a look at some of the wonderful mods people be making and use them to talk about some of the wonderful biodiversity that we share our world with. So today we've got quite an interesting assortment. We've got quite a few birds, we've got a couple birds, a fish, and quite a few mammals, so quite excited to get stuck into this one. So the first one is, of course, you typically start off with the fishes. So Aquatics has come back with a few mods. And one of them here is the alligator gar. So let's have a look at these guys here. So the alligator gar is a ray-finned fish and is related to the bowfins and is the largest species within the gar family and actually the largest one in North America. It has a very long fossil record. The gars have gone back to about 100 million years and are considered almost primitive fishes or living fossils because of their kind of real ancient history, which is really amazing. And they have retained a lot of morphological characteristics from their ancestors, since they have a digestive system that's actually more similar to sharks. And they get their name because you've got the flat round head and the kind of scales that look more like a crocodile. Alligator, I mean. So a very, very interesting animal. And get up to about 10 feet or 3 meters long, so quite enormous. So anatomy, as I mentioned, they're the largest of the gar species and the largest fish in North America. Mature alligator gars reach about 6 foot long and can weigh over 100 pounds or 45 kilos, but they get as heavy as 3 meters and 159 kilos or 10 feet and 350 pounds, which is quite interesting as well. And you can see they're all quite torpedo-shaped. These guys are apex predators in their ecosystems. But there are other species of gar that kind of look similar, but the easiest way to tell them apart is really their size, their heavy bodies and broad snouts. That's kind of the ways to tell them apart. So they have gills, like most typical fish, but they actually also have specialized swim bladders that are highly vascularized, which means they can supplement their breathing with coming out of the water and breathing with almost like a lung. And this allows them to live in water that's stagnant or poorly oxygenated as well. So that's very cool. And the scales of the alligator gar are actually not that similar to other fish. They're more... Oh, that's just my alarm. Sorry about that. They have a flexible elasmoid scales with they provide them protected by inflexible scales as well, so they kind of get the best of both worlds. And they're made of tooth enamel, analogous to tooth enamel called ganton. So very, very tough scales. So these guys, as I mentioned, are from pretty much from the Cretaceous. The first fossils of them, they've been fossils of them found in Europe in the Cretaceous to Oligocene, in Africa and India in the Cretaceous, and North America from the Cretaceous to recent. So they seem to have survived in North America for whatever reason. And despite being highly evolved, they are a lot of their anatomy is considered quite primitive for a few different reasons. You know, the digestive system and that swim bladder. That's an interesting way as well. Great example of convergent evolution. So these fish are relatively passive predators. So they seem to be sluggish, but they're quite good ambush predators. So they're opportunistic and primarily eat other fish, but they will even eat things such as waterfowl, other birds, and other birds other than waterfowl, turtles, and small mammals at the surface. And typically will ambush them as they float a few feet from the surface and then wait and lunge at the prey and grab them with their jaws. And they've been shown to be opportunistic piscivores and even scavengers. They've been known to ingest fish. And, you know, they're pretty generalist in that regard. In terms of breeding, as with most ancestral species, alligator gar are actually long-lived and mature quite late. Most females don't reach sexual maturity until they're late, about their first decade in life, so at least 10 years old. But younger gar males about half that age. So it takes about 5 years for them to reach sexual maturity in that regard. The conditions must be precise for them to spawn, and those conditions include they begin with the spring because of the longer photo period or more sunlight. As well, they trigger the event, and when the water rises and spreads over the floodplain, they create oxboletes and stuff that are perfect for the habitats for larvae and fish fry, which feed the spawning. And actual spawning occurs when males gather around gravid females. and begin writhing, twisting, and bumping to each other, trying to trigger her to lay her eggs. And then once, she lays her eggs, the males fertilize them, and then these eggs are released into the water column. Then they attach themselves to submerged vegetation, and then begin development. Only a few days are needed for the eggs to actually hatch until their larval stage, and after another 10 days they become larval fish and detach from the vegetation. And egg production is variable, but that depends on the size of the female. So bigger females have more eggs, which just seems pretty standard. I really like these guys. How can you not love these guys? They're very, very cool animals. A common formula is about a number of eggs is 4.1 eggs per gram. So that can up to be 150,000 eggs per spawn. So they're pretty impressive in that regard. So their natural range, they did live in quite a few habitats, but now they're mostly found in the southern United States, in bayous and brackish waters and bays and stuff like that. They occur from the Gulf of Texas, potentially up to Nicaragua and Costa Rica, the Gulf of Mexico, Mississippi, Oklahoma, Mississippi, all those places, Missouri, Florida is another famous place as well. But they are actually considered an invasive species in mainland China, where they can be purchased as exotic fish as well. And which is very interesting in that regard too. But in terms of the human uses, they were originally used for, their scales were used for breastplates and arrowheads and shields as well, so that's quite interesting as well. And they were considered trash fish or a nuisance species because they hunted game fish, so the fish people wanted to fish, and they were almost eradicated. They were pretty much slaughtered thousands of them, and they're just starting to come back. But now they've actually kind of changed, and now they're considered the sport fish because, they're considered, quite impressive, and if you get one, that's very impressive. So they have to be regulated in terms of sport fishing. And declining populations throughout their range is actually by harvesting, so they have white meat, which is considered quite a good snack. And obviously there's scales as well. There's small cottage industry that designs and sells jewelry made from these scales as well. So they are farmed commercially as well, and are kept in aquariums. So they can be kept in. There are a lot of species are labelled alligator gar, but they're not actually alligator gar. But they have to be kept in very large aquariums or pools. Typically, only zoos and stuff can have them. But yeah, very, very cool species. How can you not love an alligator gar? And another great one by Jake Aquatics. So we're going to leave you to it, Mr. Gar. And next up, we've got another bird. This one's done by Earth Planet Zoo. This one is a very cool one. This is the sunbittern. So let's have a look at these guys, the sunbittern. Once bitten, twice shy. So the sunbittern, they're a bittern-like bird from the tropical regions of America. And they're actually the sole member of their family, Euprogeridae, and in the genus Europyga. And they are found in Central and South America and have 3 different subspecies. So they're originally considered a guliform, so a type of rail, but then they were suggested to be related to the cargu, which is from New Caledonia, and then they were thought to be related to asbills, which is very interesting as well. But seems genetics has changed that around a bit, and they're in their own family. And there's 3 different subspecies known. There's the Amazonian sunbittern, the northern sunbittern, and the foothill sunbittern. So the range extends from Guatemala to Brazil, and then right down into the Andes, and then into the Amazon basin. Different subspecies, so I won't get into the subspecies, but they kind of range all the way down there. In terms of the description, you can see they're like a grey subdued colour, with fine linear patterns of black, grey, and brown. It has kind of vari-coloured middle webs, though. If you open its wings, it's got these kind of these bright red, yellow, and black eye spots. And they're actually used to show off to other bitterns in courtship and threat displays, like we kind of just saw before, and used to startle predators. Males and females can actually be differentiated by quite small differences in their feather. And like other birds, they have a power down, so it's like that. They have quite a long pointed bill, as you can see there, quite a long pointed bill. Not right now, but you can see it over there. They have a short hylux, as in shorebirds and rails. And the South American subspecies found in the lowland of the Andes, the upper parts are mainly brown, with the 2 other subspecies being slightly above. So, actually, can one actually put out its wings for us? I want to see. Oh, we did have a good look, but you can see it's got eye spots. It's a very interesting bird. Let's see if we can get that going. No, not happening, I don't think. I have to get them to fight. But anyway, so in terms of their behavior, they're quite cryptic birds. And they display, when they get threatened, they'll display their wings. So in terms of their feeding, they eat a wide variety of animal prey. Insects are a quite important part of their diet, and elite insects such as cockroaches, dragonfly larvae, flies, katydids, and all that stuff. Also shrimps, spiders, earthworms, stuff like that. And they'll even eat small vertebrate prey such as kind of tadpoles and fish and eels and lizards and stuff like that. And they're actually one of 12 species of birds that have been described using baits or lures to attract fish. And this type of behavior falls within the common definition of tool use. And so we know birds, there's quite a few birds that actually are known to use tools. And the bait one was something that's really, really cool. In terms of breeding, the sunbitters, they start nesting in the early wet season. So we'll have a look at the babies we're talking about. They start nesting in the early wet season before they can, it starts, and they make flight displays that can go up to 10, 15 meters or 33 to 49 feet in the forest canopy. They build open nests in trees and lay 2 eggs with blotch markings. And the young, you can see they are quite precocial. So what that means is that they can pretty much ready right out of the box. But they may remain in the nest for several weeks after hatching. So that's quite interesting as well. And again, not a particularly big bird. And they are also considered least concern. So they are still considered quite a common bird. Luckily, they're not facing too many threats. And yeah, so is the alligator gar. So they're both doing okay, even though they do face those threats. So this one's done by Elsa Planet Zoo. This one was done by Jake Quaddix. Next up, this is actually a mod that I commissioned. So I felt like I had to complete. I was thinking about commissioning a mod, and I was like, I should commission a mod. And I decided to complete the trifecta of the New Zealand parrots, because we already had the kakapo and the kia. So I had to commission the kaka. So we've got here the New Zealand kaka over here. So look at this cute one. Let's see if you can actually find an adult. Juvenile. Juvenile. There we go. And we'll have a look at the morphs soon. Don't worry about that. Don't know what the camera's up with you. No, not you. It's a morph. We don't want to look at the morph. I might look at the juveniles because they've actually, the camera's a bit better on them. There we go. So that's the juvenile. The camera's a bit wonky. That's fine. I think it might be just because they're using that as they do. Let's see if we can figure this out. Try that again. Don't know what's up with these guys. There we go. Okay. Yeah, the camera's definitely a bit wonky on this one, but that's fine. So this is a kaka, also known as New Zealand kaka. They're a species of parrot that belong to the family of New Zealand parrots and include the kia, the kaka, and the kakapo. They're quite a large parrot too, and they're found across all 3 main islands of New Zealand. And these guys are known as the kaka just normally, because the other 2 species, the Chatham and the Norfolk Island kaka, are both considered extinct. But there are 2 different subspecies, the North Island kaka and the South Island kaka, North Island kaka and South Island kaka, with the North Island one being the different one. They are quite endangered, they are vulnerable, and disappeared from much of its former range. We have a couple at my work, which are really, really fun little guys. I do love a kaka. They're both quite fun characters, and we actually breed and release them, so that's really cool. So first described by German naturalist Johann Friedrich Gelm in 1788. He published it in his revised and expanded edition of Carl Linnaeus, and he put it as Psittacus. It was Psittacus meteoralis, with the name meteoralis meaning southern. So basically it meant the southern brown parrot, and then it was put in its own genus Nesta by 1830 by René Leeson. And the 2 different subspecies, the North Island kaka is Nesta meteoralis serpentalis, and the South Island one is the species as well. So kaka in Māori literally just means parrot, so we kind of took kaka because I think it makes it a very interesting name. And as mentioned, there's 4 different species in the genus Nesta. There's the extinct Norfolk kaka, the extinct Chatham kaka, the kaka itself, the New Zealand kaka, and the kia. And they form a group that includes the kakapo, the Sticklepoididae, which is the New Zealand parrots. And they were living all together until the kia and the kaka were same species until about 2 million years ago, and then split off as well. So these guys are a medium-sized parrot. I don't know what's going on there. The camera's been a bit wonky. See if we'll actually look at you up on that perch. Yeah, that's not quite working. You've been funky. Something about this has been a bit funky. That's fine. We'll carry on looking at you. Because you look quite cute there. So they get to weigh about 390 to 560 grams, or 14 to 20 ounces, and measure about 45 centimeters long, typically. Which is quite fun as well. And they are closely related to kea, but are darker in plumage, so typically brown. So kaka are brown, kea are green. And they're typically more arboreal. So the forehead and crown you can see are greyish-white, and the nape is a greyish-brown. The neck and abdomen is more reddish, and while the wings are more brownish. And also what happens as well, both subspecies have a strong pattern, brown, grey, green plumage with orange flecks under their wings. So they are quite colourful, they just don't tend to see it, because remember that these guys lived with bird predators. And bird predators tend to see things like that, so they hide it under their wings to protect themselves. You're flying there, mate. Are you just going to sit there for me? There we go, that's perfect. So kaka beak morphology is actually also slightly different from the other kea and the kaka. The morphology is a bit narrower than the kakapo and slightly longer. However, it's not as long and sharp as the keas. So it's kind of like in between them. And you actually tell kea and kaka apart from bones as well, which is quite fun. There is some evidence of sexual dimorphism in North Island kaka, with males being larger than females. Larger bills, so the male's got a slightly larger beak, typically. But yeah, very, very cool birds. So the New Zealand kaka is a forest bird, lives in mid-alpine altitude and lowland forests, and like to inhabit mature forests. They were once widespread over New Zealand, but due to habitat modification, introduced predators like rats and cats and stoats, and predation and resource competition from introduced animals, they have declined quite a bit. Their strongholds are currently places that are predator-free, such as Codfish Island, Little Barrier, Kapiti Island, and as of 2021, less than 50% of the population of kaka was found on the mainland. It is bred rapidly on mainland islands, though, such as Zealandia, with over 800 birds, surviving and living in the city with people, which is really cool. And the South Island kaka is still considered common, a little bit more easier to find in forested areas because there's a lot more forest around there as well. The South Island kaka has a bit more white plumage as well compared to North Island kaka, and has lighter green plumage and the North Island has more olive brown. And the South Island kaka also tends to be on average 100 grams heavier, typically because of Bergman's rule. But there's no really evidence of genetic differences between the populations. It may just be, local differences, not genetic, true big differences there. They also can be found on Stewart Island, Rakiura, and Codfish Island, Whenua-Hou, and Ulva Island. So these guys are quite clever birds. They are arboreal. They live occupy mid to high canopy. They are very gregarious and move in large flocks that often include kea when they are present. They are not obligate social animals and go between living in groups and solitary. So they do like to have other kea around, but they like having the option of having other kaka around. Their behavior in groups shows their high cognition as their very complex interactions as well. And they're highly active during dawn and dusk, and sometimes be heard calling quite loudly. And they usually can be seen in groups of 3 to 5, and often forage either alone, but can be in large groups among food sources like flowering and fruiting trees there, which is quite fun. They are quite cute birds. We'll actually have a look. I also commissioned some colour morphs, so we'll have a look at the colour morphs. We've got like a red one and a yellow one based on some extinct colour morphs, from taxidermied specimens. Let's see if we can spot one. And there was also one based off one that was actually found. Don't know what you're doing up there. Let's move you just to get you down here. There you go. So this is kind of a more yellowish morph. We'll have a look at you. So breeding, we'll talk about breeding. So the New Zealand kaka nests in cavities and hollow trees. And these trees are typically over matani, rimu, totara, meadow, and hinua, and sometimes even dead trees. The exit hole is often 3 to 6 meters above the ground. Why are you flying there? 3 to 6 meters above the ground, but also can be low as ground level on predator-free islands. Their nests are lined with small wood chip and powder that they probably shoot themselves. The mother strips the bark off trees and uses them for their nest. With large wooden chips on the cavity floor, can be further chewed up and create a consistent base for the nestlings. They typically lay any time between September, late winter, and March. Occasionally, though, in a good fruiting season, they can actually double clutch, often utilizing the same nest hole for the second clutch, and extended breeding into winter. They usually lay about 4 eggs, but they can be up to 8, with 2 chicks fledging. Kaka eggs are white, slightly oval, and have a rough surface. And once the female incubates the egg for about 24 days and cares for the nestlings, so she stays in there, but the male actually comes and feeds her food. Except our pair, female likes to go grab the food all by herself. She's a very independent kaka, which is very fun. Kaka nestlings leave the next nest at about 70 days, and with nestlings as old as 11 to 20 days being unattended for most of the day and most of the night. But once they fledge, both parents feed the chick. So in terms of breeding behaviour, they are monogamous, and they tend to breed in pairs, but there are sometimes extra pair copulations, not common, they do occur. Monogamous pairs often return to breed each other year after year, and courtship involves a male approaching a female and gently pushes the female with his foot, forehead, and beak, and then moves away and kind of does that, and then that's a kind of how they do that. They tend to form groups for feeding and mating, and in these groups during the breeding season, males can be protective of their mates, and have been observed driving other species of birds and other kaka from their mates. So they, outside of this, they're not very territorial, though. They just like to protect. Another really cool thing about them is they're social. So they've been observed, social players have been observed in young kaka. They're social. They can be players be defined as 2 individuals interacting and responding to each other and exchanging information. So they're quite social birds. Like other parrots, they're very intelligent. Kia and kaka are both very intelligent. They play a lot and stuff like that. So very, very clever. And they also are very, very cool. I've actually noticed that they're very smart. There was actually a funny video on Facebook a few months ago, and I mentioned this at my talks at work, is there was a kaka found in someone's dishwasher. That shows how intelligent they are. But in terms of what they eat quite a variety of things. They feed on a variety of seeds, berries, nuts, seeds, flowers, saps, and invertebrates and stuff like that. And they use their quite strong beaks to obtain the seeds, especially the seed cones of kauri trees, and they'll dig out and to look for huhu grubs in the logs and stuff like that. And they commonly consume nectar from plants such as kowhai, flax, rata, and pahutakawa. And kaka, while feeding, often stand on one foot and use the other hand to kind of hold it and manipulate it. So they're very, very clever. And they have been observed feeding on sap. So they typically do this between mid-late winter to spring, when there's not as much fallows around. And they'll often kind of gouge the bark to get the sap. Or they'll often just rip the bark off. And they've been observed doing it to both introduced trees like pine trees and species like kauri trees. Which is quite interesting as well. They also like honeydew and nectar. They really like that, and they'll go in looking for larvae and stuff like that. They also particularly do it during the breeding season for that extra protein. So they're quite, generalist and able to find food if they want. And let's have a look at our male one. We've got one red one. Let's see if we can spot him, unless he's standing up there. Yeah, there he is. He's kind of posing there. There you go. Let's move you so you actually get a look at you. I don't know what's happening there. It's probably still a little bit bugged, but that's okay. So this is that red morph I was talking about. We'll have a look at you down there because the camera's not quite right. There we go. So that's the red one. That's actually based on a real life photo of a heuristic kaka, so quite reddish in coloration. I might actually pause it and kind of have a look at the camera from there. So that's probably a good idea. Because that would probably give us a better look, actually. There you go. Sorry, these kaka are being a bit cheeky today. That's all right, because they're always cheeky. So sadly, these guys are considered vulnerable, and there's a lot of reasons they're declining. So that includes introduced predators, that's the main one, such as cats and rats and possums and stoats. Also competition for wasps and bees for honeydew, and habitat loss is another big one. Other species of kaka, like the Norfolk Island kaka, actually became extinct in 1851 because of similar reasons. And they're considered today at risk or threatened and nationally vulnerable, so they're considered not doing too hot. So the big reasons they are declining is mainly predation. So because they're a cavity nester, mum sits on the nest and they take a long time, they're particularly vulnerable to predation. Stoats are the main cause of death for nesting adult females and fledglings, but possums will eat the eggs too. There's strong evidence to suggest that chicks, the predation of chicks and females leads to serious sex imbalances, so too many males in the population. But there is efforts to help protect them, such as 1080 drops, use of trapping and stuff like that. That's often to help them. And it's shown places like Pureorder Forest, where I'm not actually too far away from. We do a lot of work there at the work I do. We actually take usually all these birds, the decline of the predators allows them to breed, which is quite cool. And also they have competition for honeydew and stuff from, as I mentioned, wasps and bees and stuff like that. That's a big issue as well. In terms of horticulture, though, they actually are considered quite significant, and they're considered a symbol of authority and power and prestige as well. And they actually make small rings of the kakapora, which is actually like small rings of punamu and stuff like that, and used to keep them as pets as well, which is quite fun. And people have been a bit cheeky with them. So as I mentioned, Zealandia, they do have a large population of kaka after Zealandia was set up and had a fence around it to keep the predators out. So they're actually starting to go out into the local area, and people have been feeding them like cheese and nuts and stuff like that, which causes them to get metabolic bone disease. They've also been nesting in people's roofs, chewing on people's furniture and stuff like that. They're normally quite destructive. While some property damage, people have got negative opinions of them. Overall, most people are really positive about the kaka coming back to Wellington. So hopefully we just got to really learn to live with these guys, because parrots are quite destructive. And I have to say, you are pretty cute there. I like you there. You look very cute. Very, very cute. So it's all the different morphs. So yeah, I commissioned this one. So my first commissioned mod for Planet Zoo after about 5 years, but I really wanted to do one, and there it is. So that's why I spent all that extra time on it. So next up, we have got by Mark. Oh, that was done by Great Cakes Mods, by the way. Great Cakes Mods, always makes pretty great mods as well. And there might be another one coming from Great Cakes Mod from me. So we'll see how that comes around. But next up, we've got the Impala. So let's have a look at the Impala. Let's see, where is the male Impala? Is he impartial Impala? Where is he? There he is. So there's different versions to get. It's big horn, small horn, medium horn. I picked the big horn because I gotta do that. I gotta pick the most impressive one for the episode. So here we have got the Impala, also called the Rutubok, which means black-footed high horn in ancient Greek. These guys are a medium-sized antelope from eastern and southern Africa, and the only extant member in their genus Apceros, which is in the tribe Arabsoni, which is first described by German zoologist Heinrich Lichtenstein in 1812. And there's two different subspecies, the common impala, which the one is, and the darker black-faced impala, which is quite fun as well. So, as I mentioned, they're the sole member of their group. They're closely related to the Sudi. And they were originally up to 6 subspecies, but now there's only the common impala and the black-faced impala. So the common impala is known pretty much through East and South Africa, and the black-faced impala is really only known to Namibia and Angola. It's interesting as well. So they're about a medium-sized, slender-body antelope. Head-to-body length about 130 centimeters or 51 inches. Males reach approximately 75 to 92 or 30 to 36 inches at the shoulder, while the females about 70 to 85 or 28 to 33 inches. Males typically weigh between 53 and 76 kilograms, 117 to 168 pounds, and females about 53 kilograms, or 40 to 53 kilograms, or about 88 to 117 pounds. With females being hornless and the males having these larger horns, these spire horns, they can get up to about 42 to 95 centimeters, or 18 to 36 inches in length. The arch-like structures of them allow them to kind of fight them, and also protects the skull from damage when they're fighting. They have a glossy coat with a two-tone, counter shading. So the top bit is very, like a tawny color and rich brown, and then the underparts are kind of much more light and all that, which is quite fun. They have also a little bit of white, black around the ears and white around the ears too, so you can see that around there as well. Black streaks are also on the buttocks and hind limbs. You can see that going on there. Really, really cool. They also have scent glands covered by black tuft on their hind legs that they use to communicate with each other as well. So in terms of their biology, they're diurnal, so they're mainly active during the day, though activity tends to cease during the midday when it gets quite hot. Three distinct social groups can be observed: the territorial male, the bachelor males, and the bachelor herds and the female herds. So very similar to a lot of other ungulates, they have kind of a territorial male that hold a territory that may have female herds in it, and that's kind of demarked by urine and feces. Bachelor herds can be small, less than 30 members, and they generally kind of hang around each other and have a small home range. And then the female herds vary from about 6 to 100, and they can have home ranges up to about 180 hectares, or about 440 acres. And they're the only ungulate that actually displays self-grooming as well as allo-grooming, so that's quite fun as well. And that's how they maintain those relationships. Social behavior is influenced by different things such as climate and geography. So at certain times of year, they tend to be territorial and gregarious at other times. So it kind of depends on seasons and stuff like that as well. They're actually quite an important prey species in Africa for a lot of Africa's large carnivores, such as cheetahs, leopards, lions, hyenas, alligators, and not alligators, crocodiles and pythons and stuff like that. There's no alligators in Africa, I'm afraid. But yeah, they'll have a good female for a bit. How they avoid predators: they have two characteristic leaps. They can leap up to 3 meters in the air over vegetation, any even other impala, covering distances of up to 10 meters. And the other is a series of jumps called strutting, which allows them to get away to different directions, allows them to confuse predators. It's quite fun as well. In terms of diet, they browse as well as graze, depending on how much grass or browse is in the area. And they eat typically monocots, dicots, forbs, and acacia pods whenever available. So that kind of depends on the local area, but they're quite generalist in that regard. And then we get to talk about reproduction, so we can talk about little baby impalas. I'm impartial to the impalas, you know. So look at the cute little guy. So males reach sexual maturity about a year age, but they can only really start breeding at about 4 years old. Mature males start establishing territories to find access to females, and females can conceive after about a year and a half of living. Estrus lasts about 24 to 45 hours and occurs every 20 to 29 days in non-pregnant females. The annual 3-week-long rut, or the breeding season, begins at the end of the wet season, typically May, and that causes them to get extra testosterone, causes the males to get big and grumpy, and they will fight each other and rut with each other with their horns, strutting and displaying, and then running and chasing each other, and then eventually locking horns and pushing each other. They actually desist from feeding, and in the rut they pretty much just go and look at that, and then they find females. The gestation's about 6 to 7 months, with births typically occurring in the midday, with the female isolating herself from the herd when the labour pains begin. The perception is females can delay giving birth for an additional month if conditions are harsh, may not be realistic. A single calf is born and immediately concealed in cover for the first 4 weeks of birth. The fawn then joins its nursery group within the mother's herd, and calves are then suckled for about 4 to 6 months, with young males being forced out of the group and join bachelor herds while the females stay back. So in terms of habitats, these guys actually inhabit woodlands due to their preference for shade, but they often can be found in kind of the middle ground between woodland and savanna. And in southern Africa, they can be found a lot in acacia woodlands as well. They actually, a study actually found that the reduction of woodland cover and creation of scrubland by the African bush elephants have actually favoured impala populations. So that's another species that benefits from animals like that. But in terms of the kind of range, how they're doing, the common impala is doing quite well. It is considered species of least concern. But the black-faced impala subspecies, as of 2008, there was believed to be only less than 1,000 left. And though there's no major threat to their survival to the common impala, poaching and natural calamities has contributed to the decline of the black-faced impala. And as of 2008, the population of common impala was actually estimated to be about 2 million. And according to studies, trend locations of black impala can be quite important for their conservation. And although about a quarter of the common impala populations are in protected areas, so there's a lot of protected areas with them, the rare black-faced impala has been introduced into private farms and stuff like that, so they are protected. Just need more of them in the world. But yeah, very, very cool. Do love an impala. As I mentioned, impartial to an impala. So yeah, that's another mod done by Mark. You haven't seen Mark at 96 for a little bit, but really excited to see him for a bit. Next one is also a Great Cakes mod. So we've got here the short-eared dog. So let's have a look at these cute little guys. How can you not love a good doggy? So this is the short-eared dog. So the short-eared dog, or Altocinus mitosus, there are also known as the small-eared dog, small-eared fox, or the small-eared zorro. These guys are quite a unique canid from South America, and they're endemic to the Amazonian basin, and the only one in their genus. They are endemic, with the local name being Zorro de Ojecora, or the short-eared fox, and they've got other lots of different names and things. So looking into the genetics, they're actually quite distantly related to other kind of species of South American canids. They have a common ancestor. It's about 3.9 million years old, and these findings are consistent with the ancestor coming from the Isthmus of Panama. And once they got there, these guys would have split off and doing their things. Although it's superficially related to the bush dog, the closest relative of the short-eared dog is actually the crab-eating fox. And it's a very weird canid, so we'll get to talk about it quite a bit. I'm really excited to talk about this one. So the short-eared dog can be found in the Amazon rainforest region, South America, so Brazil, Bolivia, Peru, Colombia, Ecuador, and Venezuela. There's a single report of 3 slender dog-like animals of this species sighted in the Darien region of Panama. And in 1984, by German biologist Signe Wiesel and the National Embedder National Para-American. And this is a rare species. Its presence in Panama because of the continuous massive forests in the region. So they live in various parts of the rainforest, preferring areas with little human disturbance. So they're quite a mysterious canid as well. They live in both lowland forests, as well as swamp forests and cloud forests and stuff like that. And a solitary animal, and prefer to remain under tree cover and avoiding people. So in terms of appearance, they have short and slender limbs, with short and rounded ears. They have a flox-like muzzle, and they've also got a bushy tail. They've also got slightly webbed paws, or partially webbed paws, due to living in rivers, and then they have a bit more aquatic habits. Their fur ranges from dark to reddish grey, but can be almost nearly navy blue, coffee brown, dark grey, or chestnut grey to black. And the coat is short with thick and bristly fur. It has a somewhat narrow chest, with dark colour variations on the thorax merging with brighter or reddish tones on the abdominal side of the body. So that sounds about right, doesn't it? And you look quite cute, aren't you? Great Cakes, so always doing a great job. These guys are mainly carnivores, and the biggest parts of their diet are fish, insects, small mammals, and fruits and birds. So those are the main parts of their diet. In terms of reproduction, we'll have a look at the babies while we talk about that, of course. But have a look at the cute little babies. How cute. So this species has unique behaviours that are actually quite weird compared to canids. So the females of the species are actually 1/3 the size of the males, and the excited male sprays a musk produced from his tail gland, and they do prefer a solitary lifestyle in forest areas, and they avoid humans in their natural environment, and agitated males actually raise the hair on their back almost like a cat. The lifespan of a short-eared dog is unknown, along with the gestation period, that they're believed to reach sexual maturity in about 3 years. Which is quite late compared to other species of canids. So they're probably quite slow breeding. So the biggest threats to their survival is feral dogs, because they compete with them, and they will spread viruses such as canine distemper and rabies, and they suffer greatly from loss of habitat, clearing of the Amazon, and they're quite sensitive to human disturbance, so they try to avoid areas where people are around, so they really need pristine habitats to kind of live in there. And that has caused them to be considered near threatened. There's been no comprehensive ecological or genetic research carried out on these sort of species, which is a little bit tragic. Yeah, very, very cool. Another Great Cakes mod, another banger. We like a good banger. Next up, we have got, this is the Siberian lynx, done by Lorby. So Lorby has done the Siberian lynx. So this is Lynx wrangeli, also known as the East Siberian lynx. These are the second most common subspecies of the Eurasian lynx, and they can be found in Russia, Far East, North Korea, Mongolia, and China, particularly Manchuria and East Indian Mongolia. There's believed to be about 5,890 mature individuals as of 2013, and these guys are mainly a forager, and their prey includes animals such as hares and Siberian roe deer. And according to a study done on the mortality of these the subspecies, the average lifespan of a Siberian lynx is about 15 years. So there are 6 main subspecies of the Eurasian lynx, and other subspecies have been reported based on their geographical presence, such as the Tichuan and the Itali lynx. But a comprehensive study done in 2024 suggested that the morphological and genetic differences between the subspecies of Eurasian lynx as well. It has been determined that this morphology is the difference of morphological differences are gradual and not explicitly distinguished by halotypes, and there's really only separate halotypes for some of one of the well-known species. So there's kind of these kind of lynx here. So that's definitely the Siberian lynx. Really, really cool. Not too different from other lynx. We already got the Eurasian lynx in game. And let's see if we can have a look at the baby, because we got to have a look at the baby. How cute is that baby? Do love a cute baby. Really, really cool. All right, next up, last but certainly not least, we've got another Great Cakes mod. We love a Great Cakes mod. We've got here, this is Barbophelus filcari. So this is a very interesting animal. So Barbophelus is, this is the types of species as well. So Barbophelus is an extinct genus of feliform in this family Barbaraphelidae, which is part of the false saber-tooth. So they're not closely related to Smilodon and those kind of saber-tooths. It's actually related to Nimravids, such as Barbophelus, along with Albanosmilus, which were the last known Nimravids. And they lived from North America to Eurasia during the Miocene, during about 12 to 7 million years ago. And there's 5 different species known. This particular species is Flickeri, and Flickeri kind of being similar in that trend. It was the most recent species, but also the largest. So other species were about leopard size, but these guys got quite large. They got to about 70 to 128 kilograms, or between 154 to 282 pounds, with Flickeri being, up to about 328 kilograms, or basically the same size as lions. Although there was some potentially, even the smaller, even though a later study showed they were smaller, at about 256, which is quite similar in size. And there's other species kind of more similar in that regard. So the taxonomy on this guy has been a little bit weird. They were originally considered members of the Machaerodont family, so more closely related to, of course, Smilodon and stuff like that. But it turns out they're their own family, and even though recently they've would have been more considered to be Nimravids, and they were thought they also be their own thing, but most recent genetics, and not really genetics, but most recent morphology studies suggest that they are related or a part of the Nimravid family. They're in their own kind of family within the Nimravids. And there's also a species, another genus called Albanosmilus jordani, which is believed to be the answer of this genus, which migrated to North America during the late Miocene. So the type species as well would have been the largest Barbophelid, as well as the largest Nimravid, lion-sized predator, with robust limb bones and stuff like that. They're very convergent with the Machaerodonts, as you can see. They've got big, bulky bodies and stuff like that. They presumably would have had a similar lifestyle. Individuals would have reached about 90 centimeters tall at the shoulder, and estimates of them about 250 kilograms, or 600, about 500 pounds. So quite large. The smaller species, though, are more about leopard size. This genus also had the longest canids of any Barbophelid, so probably the most Smilodon of this Barbophelids. It was also flattened, indicating a high degree of specialization. They had a longitudinal groove on the lateral surface that could actually allow blood from the wound to float away. And this groove was actually most likely an adaptation to make the canids lighter while maintaining strength. And other notable traits include the presence of a port orbital bar and stuff like that. And they've also got a very bear-like build, which is very similar to, Smilodon, like especially Populata and stuff like that. In terms of other aspects about them, got growth and development. So there was actually a study that looked at the development and suggested that Barbophelus had delayed eruptions, so they would have had a long period of parental care. Additionally, skeletons of juvenile Barbophelus had been found, and they wouldn't gain their sabers until they were near adult size. So this indicates they were dependent on their mother, and they may have been living in social groups like lions, which is quite interesting as well. And that's been shown for Smilodon as well. Social behavior, as we kind of talked about before. Because of that, we think they would have been social and more hanging out together and been apex predators and hunting together. And we do have a forelimb from a 2020 another species it was less constrained fall and movement than contemporary species of Machaerodont and Ravids and extant felids. So it suggests these guys had increased mobility in the forelimbs that suggest they were really good at grappling prey and are great ambush predators, and walk and trotted around the forest floor like badgers and ursids and stuff like that. It wouldn't have been opportunistic and attacked prey within reach, and it could have engaged in scavenging as well, and it would likely not have been a boreal or something like that. And they actually found that the leopard-sized Barbophilis species Morsoni had a similar crucial index to the lion-sized Phytalis as well. So they would have had the same leverage as Smilodon, even though it was smaller. And you can imagine some of the bigger species to have found they had a greater power output on their limbs than even Smilodon. So they would have been able to take prey much larger than itself. And they also had quite a large jaw gape as well. The most recent ones is kind of suggested for Beeflicae about 89 degrees, which is much lower than the Smilodon's pretty much massive one of like 120. And looking at it as well, they actually suggest a massive maximum gape of about 73 degrees and little evidence over 90. So these guys weren't quite as gaping and able to bite as long, bite as wide as a Smilodon. And when it came to stabbing, though, the skull was not as evenly distributed as Smilodon, with regional stressors mainly being on the parietal bones and the upper canines. When pulling back those stressors, Smilodon was more evenly distributed than Barbophilis. So it suggested that they potentially having a stress-resistant skull, they would have been able to penetrate more easily than Smilodon. So they would have been able to penetrate easier, and kind of the Barbophilis skull had less stresses and was more generalist in prey killing than Smilodon, so a little bit less specialized. So that's quite fun as well. In terms of where it lived, Beeflicae, as I mentioned, is the big species. That's this one here. And also the latest, it lived in Kansas, Nebraska, Texas, and Nevada. It's between 9 and 7 million years ago, and would have lived with borophagian canines such as Epicyon and Borophagus, extinct foxes, the bear Ingloactos, Nimraves, which was a Machaerodont, and a Mustelid Stellanthus. Also would have lived with early rhinos such as Teleceros and Amplesos, horses such as Protohippus, Calohippus, and Dinohippus, and also the Proboscidean and Belladon. So that's quite fun as well. And we don't really know why they went extinct, but we think that they would have gone extinct in result with competition with Machaerodonts, which were a bit more well adapted for grasslands. However, it has been argued against that, as the overlap between the two groups were limited, and it may have just been typically a faunal changeover, so where you saw a decline in their prey animals such as horses and camelids and stuff like that. So that's kind of suggested why they went extinct. And I gotta say, it's another great mod by Great Cakes Mod. So there's the male. We'll have a look at the female for a little bit, and then I think we'll finish up. Really, really cool. So anyway, really love this episode, so I'm going to thank everyone really quick. So thank you, Jay Quadix, for your alligator gar. Thank you, Alessa for your sunbittern. Thank you, Mark, for your Impala. Thank you, Lorby, for the links. And thank you, Great Cakes Mod, for the Barbophilis and the short-eared dog. And in particular, thank you for doing the New Zealand kaka. Thank you, I really appreciate that. It's nice to complete the trifecta. And I'm really excited for the next mod I'm going to commission from you. So, yeah, I think this is a great place to end the video. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys like and subscribe, always remember a little bell icon to get notified of new things. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.